dream offer pipeline creation. That's what I'd love to talk about. Just not only being able to consistently land interviews and offers, which is great, but actually do it with dreamland offers.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Undeniable One-on-One. This is a series dedicated to you, the remote sales professionals, where we break through the generic one-size-fits-all advice that most trainers are giving, and we showcase the power of personalized mentorship, getting to know the individual and giving them one-of-one advice and counterintuitive feedback and tips. So we have a very special guest. I know I say that every time, but we just keep having special guests. I can't help it. Right? So we have a very special guest, someone that I've worked with a long time, that I highly respect, someone that I've seen on both sides of the coin. I've seen the struggles and the limiting beliefs and the fears that we all come up with, but I've also seen the person show up, ask the questions, take their own future into their own hands and make something incredible happen, to the point where we've even seen him number one on a campaign with something like 150 reps doing 7 million a month. And to see him at the top of the leaderboard after seeing everything that he's been through and just continue to climb, and just a testament. One of the nicest guys in the space, always trying to help other people, always, putting other people first. Just an amazing student mentality, right? Very humble, never thinks, oh, I know this or I got this, like is willing to go back to the very ground zero and build up. And it's just been incredible to watch this man's journey. B-Rye, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And wow, that is an amazing introduction. I should hire you to wake me up every morning.
That's it, man. Yeah, that could be a new gig for me. Little alarm recordings and motivation. I love it. So what are we going to talk about today? What's going on with you?
Yeah. In one sentence, dream offer pipeline creation. That's what I'd love to talk about. Just not only being able to consistently land interviews and offers, which is great, but actually do it with dreamland offers, having a pipeline of dreamland offers.
Right. Yeah.
Ready.
Yeah, you're at that point now where you've had these peak months and you've worked with great companies, and that's obviously a good thing. It's a good problem to have, but it creates a new problem in that you don't want to take a step backwards. And when you set the bar high and you have these 20K months and you get used to that, right? What that does is it takes a lot of offers off the table, right? And that, if you look at it in percentages, you could argue either way, but let's say 20% of the opportunities in this space can facilitate a 6-figure earnings. Right? But what happens when you hit that and then you want to go for multiple 6 figures? What happens when you want to go for that, 240 to 350, a year? Things change, right? In that when you're looking at the pipelines that are there, right, it's very scarce and highly competitive. And then, you're putting your name in the hat. And, from what I'm hearing is, even when there is something in the pipeline or job board, I've talked to a lot of students that they're getting the opportunities because they have a friend inside. And so 200 people are applying and you think, oh, someone's going to get that job. And then someone totally outside of the pipeline gets the opportunity anyway, right? So we have a scarcity in that there's more talented people than there are, big time opportunities. And so we have to look at what we can do to land those. And I think the biggest thing for me is looking outside of the job. If we go out there and we say, okay, B-Rye wants to make 25K a month, right? If I said, go out and find a job that can facilitate 25,000 a month, it's going to be a difficult task, right? You might find some OTEs, but as you know, OTEs are not a strong piece of evidence, right? Every job I see is a 10K opportunity until you realize, you get in the door and no one's ever made 10K, right? So what do we do? And for me, it was, okay, I want to, most traditional job searches are jobs, people, company, or jobs, company, people. And I started to turn that on its head. I started to look at it and say, well, that's typically, like, sometimes by the time I start the application process, it's 8 weeks in before I even see what happens. And sometimes I don't even hear back. And so I asked myself, what would happen if I flipped that? And I went people first, right? And so instead of going out and job hunting, in a way, I'm people hunting. And I'm looking for clues. I kind of think about putting a detective hat on. And, a detective wouldn't go to a crime scene and be like, hey, B-Ride, did you do it? No. Okay, Tom, did you do it? No. Julie, did you do it? Damn, it's hard to solve this crime, right? That wouldn't be good detective work. But when you think of how most people approach this job market, that's kind of what they do. It's like, hey, B-Ride, do you have a job for me that's 25K? Hey, JD, do you have a job 25K? Oh, I can't find these jobs, right? And so instead, a good detective is going to look for clues and form theories, and they're going to think like the criminal, and they're going to talk to the right people, and they're going to go in the right places, and they're kind of looking for a trail. And so what I realized was, especially, like, I got to a point where I didn't want to make any less than 35K a month. Well, that really narrows it down, right? And so what I realized is I have to start looking for clues, and not everything is going to be apparent. And so, I mean, the first clue I looked at is the 10X rule, right? Right now, closers typically make 10%, right? So that means for me to make 35K, a good theory would be that the company has to be earning at least 10X what I want to earn each month, right? So if I'm at 35K, I want the company to be at 350K, right? So now what clues can I look for that's going to allow me to find those companies? Well, I'm going to start creating some keywords and some ideas, right? So I want a company that's doing 7 or 8 figures. Now, that's not a mind-blowing keyword, but if I go into groups and I start searching, for 7 figures, if I start looking for 7-figure business owners, that's at least a good clue, right? Now, I can take this a step further. There's a lot of things I can do there, right? I can look at marketers, and I can start to look at who's working with the best marketers and who has had results with those marketers, right? And now all of a sudden I have business owners, I have marketers. Those are 2 kind of suspects that I can start adding to my repertoire, right? Into my search. And then I start thinking, well, what if I found salespeople that were making 35K? If I find a salesperson that's making 35K, I know the marketing's good, I know the sales is good, and I know the business is making money. So to me, that's a direct shot. And I found that no one loves to take credit more for salespeople's success than sales trainers. So every day, I literally have someone who's collecting these case studies and success stories. Most people are looking at it and be like, oh, this guy's marketing, or he thinks he's the best. I'm looking at it and be like, keep giving me names. You've just given me, 3, 4, 5 names. Now I have all these contacts, right? So what I'm doing is I'm looking to be successful. So instead of finding the job I can be successful, I'm finding success first, and then I'm looking for the job, right? Because I want to start narrowing my search and spend time with the 20% that are 80% likely to get me the opportunity, right? So I start building that web, right? That's as far as the research and the detective work. I'm looking for sales. I'm looking for market. I'm looking for branding. I'm looking for fulfillment. I'm looking for keys to success. And I want to surround myself with successful people, knowing that the best opportunities are going to be around them, right? Now, indirectly, I think you already know what I'm going to say, right? Is I know you've accomplished great things. I know you're a great person, right? I gave you that great introduction, and I don't lie, right? So I've spent a lot of time with you. I know how loyal you are. I know how reliable you are. I know how much integrity you have. And I know you're a performer as well. You're a very rare breed in that a lot of people who perform don't have the integrity or reliability. A lot of people who are reliable and have the integrity don't have the performance. You have both, right? And you're mature, and there's a lot of good qualities. I'm going to ask you, right? Like, if I asked 100 random people in this space, what do you think B-Ride's best month was? What do you think they would say? Would they know?
I knew where you're coming from. Branding.
Yeah. Yeah, you've done amazing things, right? And this idea, right? And it's the irony of like a lot of sales trainers don't want you to brand because they want you to rely on skill and skill alone. But this idea that the numbers speak for themselves is ridiculous. How much has your numbers jumped off the leaderboard and went networked for you, right? When you go to a new team and a new person, the numbers don't speak, you speak, right? You have to present that. And what I've found is people love to play this versus game, right? Especially when they're trying to sell you something, right? So they'll be like, oh, don't brand, don't network, sales skill, right? And be like, well, how good is that skill if no one knows you exist, right? And that people aren't knocking down your doors. You've done a good job with the networking and you built some close relationships. So I think there's some opportunities there. But what I think is, especially when you get up to that 25, 35, 45K, what I've found is those opportunities are going to someone before they ever make it to Facebook. They're going to someone, you never hear about them. I never hear about them. But what happens is two random people have a conversation and your name gets brought up or someone else's name gets brought up or no names get brought up. That's what happens, right? When I have a problem, I don't post about it first on Facebook. I talk to the people I trust. I'm going to link with some of the relationships. And if that's not the case, right, then I'm going to expand to that outer circle. Then I'm going to go to the network or the brand, right? So it's like you're missing out on opportunities, right, that we'll never even hear about because someone else's name is being brought up. Referrals are the number one source of new hires. And I feel like you do have some good connections through networking, but if I asked you, like, how long would it take you to network with 1,200 people, roughly? All right.
If I put on full-time dedication, probably about a month.
A month, full-time.
Maybe, yeah.
Right. And can you afford to go full-time? I mean, you got a lot of things going on. Could you stop everything and network for a month?
No.
No.
Time is too valuable.
Right. So let's say you have an hour a day, reasonably, right, without affecting too much to network. How long would it take you to network with 1,200 people with an hour a day?
For an hour a day?
Approximately.
Well, now that I run the numbers in my head and sound a little more specific, I would actually say probably would take me about a month and a half.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's being pretty generous. I think full on like 1,200, right? Like you can really make about 10 to 20 connections a day, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah. So that's two or 3 months.
Right. Minimum, right? Minimum. And I mean, probably if you looked, you've been around and you see them for a while, and probably you're at that 1,200 mark pretty close to now, right? So it could be 2 years, right? So what I'm getting at is my last post reached 1,200 people. That last post took me 3 minutes, right? And I'm going to do another one later. Actually, I have 2 more scheduled today. And some of those are crossover. I'm not going to say it's 1,200 new people and 1,200 new people, but Facebook is doing the work for me. Facebook is putting it in front of new people. Facebook is telling me who's engaging. Facebook is telling me what they're engaging to. So not only am I getting eyeballs, right, but I'm also getting data. I'm also getting feedback. I'm also building up, right? Because sometimes, it's kind of like the small talk, like to get to the depth of core values for us to network together, right? It might take 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 conversations. I can put myself out there and in one post, I can change someone's belief about me. I can put myself in a different category. I can build a certain level of trust that through networking, which I still think is extremely valuable, I have to open those doors and I have to hope that they see the message and I have to hope they respond and I have to hope they're having the conversation. I have to hope they don't think that I'm trying to do something. There's a lot of steps there. But when I talk about my values, when I talk about who I am, when I share my experience, and I'm not talking about, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I don't want to brag. I get that, right? I get the humility. I like it, right? But what if, and I call it kind of a humble brag, what if instead of like, oh, this is how I made this much money, or this is what I do, or I'm the expert, we put it from a place of, you're a very humble person, right? So put it from a place of, you know, these are the challenges that I had getting to this point, or I got to this point and I just scratched the surface, right? So it's like, that's the accent of like, look what I've done, right? But the focal point is the inspiration. The focal point is the support. The focal point is the core values. The focal point is the integrity. And now all of a sudden you have access to these, 1,200 eyeballs, well, really 2,400 eyeballs, because each person has two, right? But you have access to that visibility. Now, all of a sudden you're attracting people in your tribe. So your networking becomes easier, and you'll start being top of mind in those conversations, right? There's certain people, I'm not even in the game anymore, and I get more referrals to opportunities than most people, right? Because when there's certain things said, my name comes up behind closed doors. I didn't think about it, and now I can pass those on to UCM students. So there's still, like, each week I'm getting, 3-4 opportunities for referrals. I'm not even seeking them. Right. And so I think, as far as anybody who's overlooking personal branding right now is doing themselves a huge disservice. It's like walking a marathon compared to having a bike, right? It just makes things more efficient. It's part of a full package. It's not going to replace skill. It's not going to replace relationships, but it's one thing that you can add in that gives you visibility, attention, a lot more leverage, and it allows you to speak freely in things that you have to earn the right to in a conversation. So that would be my 2 tips for you. Is 1, start building a directory of success and look for clues. Top recruiters, top businesses, top marketers, top salespeople. Find the success first, then find the company, then find the job. And then secondly, get the credit that you deserve by putting yourself out there from your values, from what you're learning, from what you're doing, and get that top of mind. Get involved in those conversations that right now you're not a part of. That's it. Everything else is
you just blew my brain a little bit there. I think that for quite a while you've been talking to me about branding and how it affects me, and I think I kind of known, but it wasn't until this conversation that I really was able to put into a logistical numerical values. Like, wow, I am missing out majorly.
Yeah, especially someone like yourself that has so many things going on, right? Like, it doesn't take you more time, it saves you more time, right? Like, if you think about how I got people into UCM, if I had to go out and have the conversations individually and provide that value, or, reach those people or build that trust, like, I wouldn't be anywhere, right? I'd still be doing cold outbound, right? So this is that organic reach where you can tap in and build up. And I think, for anybody watching this, if it's like, yeah, but I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to do, like, you're overcomplicating already, right? Like, let's say B-Rye struggles with, like, I just don't want the attention, right? That's a big one, right? I'm just not that kind of guy. I don't want it to be seen as bragging, right? Okay, that's great. Why don't you become the most supportive person in the community, and your content is about showcasing other people who are doing great things? You're already now building this list of great companies and great salespeople, and you have all of this. So all of a sudden, use your spotlight to shine it on someone else. I just had an amazing call with JD. He does it, I appreciate that. And now people associate you and me together, right? Like, oh, I just talked to Natalie, or we had an alumni call, or this happened. Like, they're doing incredible stuff. Now it's B-Rye, oh, the humble person, right? Or like, some of the things that have been helpful, or some of the people that have been helpful in me producing XYZ result. You still get the credit for the result, but now it's like, oh yeah, he's humble, there's humility, and you still get the power of the branding without being like, hey, look at me. There's so many ways around it. And if you're like, okay, well, that's good, but I can't only put supportive, right? Learn something every day and share it. Every single person watching this, if you can't do that, then maybe you don't have time for success, or maybe you don't have what it takes to be successful. But if you can't justify learning one thing, I'm talking about a 5-minute video, a chapter of a book, a podcast, You listen for 5 or 10 minutes, you take one principle, you share that, you get the credit for it and the value for it. If you can't do that, right? Like my saying that hits home sometimes is, if you don't have time for the things to make you successful, you probably don't have time for the success, right? So if you're listening to this and you're making excuses and you can't listen to a podcast or a video or watch this video and share something, anything, read a chapter of a book and share the thought process from it. It takes you 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it's done, right? And it's valuable and it gets you the attention because your numbers don't speak for themselves. And if there's two people that have the same skill level and this person has an audience and this person is well known and this person is trusted and this person has people in their corner that are speaking for them, this person is going to fucking blow that person out of the water every single time. There was times where I got opportunities over people that I knew were better than me, but I was in the role because I had that army around me. I had people that were willing to vouch for me, and I was in conversations that other people weren't. And so I didn't sacrifice my skill. I multiplied it with the branding. And I think you're at that position now.
Yeah, I agree.
Beautiful. That's it. I think good place to end it.
Fantastic.
Awesome,
Yes.
man. I love it, man. And I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. And it's been such an honor to be part of your journey and see the trials and tribulations. I think it's inspiring for people because it's, we go through our own limiting beliefs and you see someone at the very top and you see how eloquently spoken they are and the leading and all these things. And you're like, easy for them to say. Well, I remember someone saying like, oh yeah, well, I want to be like B-Rai. So this, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Right? Like B-Rai would have a good laugh at that. Like he'd be honored, I'm sure. But like what you see is not the start, right? And you went through all the things that everybody has to go. You passed through those gates. And I think that's the trueness. It's like we need more people like you sharing those stories that, hey, this is not glamorous industry. This is not an overnight success, right? There's trials and tribulations and it never ends. Right? You hit the peak and then you're like, oh, this is it now, 20K every month. And then something happens and you got to rebuild and you got to redevelop and you got to shift. Right. And so I love using you as an example of someone who's had their slips and had their falls, but always got back up and, put back in and got out of it what they put in. So I appreciate having you. For anybody watching this, please like the video and subscribe so you can see the next one. And I'm always checking the comment section. So if you have a question or you want to be featured on one of these episodes, you have a question that you'd like to go over, I'd love to have you. Appreciate it. Thanks, B-Rai. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you, JD.
All right,
Appreciate
guys.
you.
Take care.
All right, that's it. I want to thank you for watching today, and I hope you received some value from this training session. Make sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified when we release the next training session. If you would like to be featured on a future training session, make sure to join our remote sales community on Facebook. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover on a future training session, just leave a comment below. Appreciate you. Onwards and upwards.